Welcome to today's edition of the 2024 Rome and Floyd County High School Football Preview Show Series. WLAQ Sports sits down with each area head coach to discuss the upcoming season. Here are your hosts, Matt Davis and Ian Griffin.
Hello, football fans, and welcome to the Unity Christian School Lions Football Preview Show for the 2024 season, presented by WLAQ Sports. We're glad to be joined by the head coach of the Lions, David Humphreys. Coach, appreciate you coming by and talking football with us.
Well, Ian, you and Matt, just thanks so much for the invitation. It's always good to talk football. We walked in and said it's time to start talking ball, right? So it is time.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we're glad to have you here, and we'll jump right into our conversation. And talk a little bit about your path to Unity. You have been around the block in this region, from pro, college. I mean, you've done it all.
Sure.
But talk about how you ended up at Unity Christian.
Yeah, well, okay, so Ian, I think this is year 38 for me or something like that. So I'm originally from Arkansas and played at Arkansas Tech and got hurt my senior year, didn't get to play, and so luckily became a student assistant at the high school where I'd graduated from, with a new head coach. I didn't even know the guy, and worked with him for 2 years. And then, somebody knew somebody that knew somebody, and I got hooked up with Fred Akers at Purdue. And so I went from Arkansas to Purdue, West Lafayette, Indiana. I coached up there for 2 years, worked with some guys from Georgia, and all of a sudden find myself at the University of Georgia with Coach Goff whenever he came in '89. And then from there, I went to UT Chattanooga, where I met my wife and coached there for 3 years. And then I got into high school ball. And I told myself that if I was going to coach high school ball, I was either going to do it in the state of Georgia or the state of Texas. That was the only two states I'd coach in. And I actually took a job in Houston at a high school, and they put a hiring freeze on the state. And so nobody from outside the state could come in, and I landed a job at LaGrange. And was there 1 year when the coach, Guthrie, came to Rome. And so I came to Rome in 1994, if we can remember that. All right. I
was at Rome.
I know you were. I know. You had more hair and I had less gray, right? But anyhow, so I came to Rome, and I was there 11 years at Rome, and then my last 4 years as the head coach. Left there and got into a pro ball with the Rome Renegades. Had a great run here, and then from there went to the Georgia Force that was owned by the Falcons and Arthur Blank, and did that for a year. Good Lord kind of took care of me right there because I nearly made a really bad decision. That league folded after about another year. Came back, said, "Hey, look, I'm gonna raise my kids. I've been chasing everything else. So I'm gonna raise my kids." Took the job at Trime, was there for 4 years as a head coach, 5 years. I went to Gordon Central. Took that as started getting into ministry. I still work for a Fellowship of Christian Athletes as well. Started getting in ministry when I was at GC, and decided it was time for me to step out. Stepped out for about 3 years. Sitting in church one day, got a text, and it was like, "Hey, I need some help." And they had approached me the year before, and it was not right, and I didn't feel right about it, and wasn't the right fix. But a year later, I get the text in the middle of church, and it's like, "Hey, I need to talk to you." All of a sudden, we show up and, become the head football coach at Unity Christian, and I guess this will be my 4th year there. Been a lot of fun. It's a totally different game, which I know we'll talk about. And it was something that really stretched me. Got to learn a lot of really good lessons early. I think that's always makes you a little more hungry whenever you don't come in. Not that you know everything, but you know what I mean, when you're comfortable. And so, yeah, it's been a huge challenge, but, we've been fortunate to have some success and enjoying life right now for sure.
We've got the head coach of the Unity Lions with us here in the studio. Very excited about our conversation, enjoying it already. And we're going to go ahead and jump into our next question, Coach. And this one is related to something you were just talking about. You talked about, coaching at all levels, high school, college, even up to the pro ranks. Mm-hmm. So, what stands out about your situation here coaching these kids at Unity, and what do you bring from those other experiences, that helps you in this situation?
Yeah, sure. I think that's a great question, Matt. Matter of fact, I had a kid today ask me what's the difference in coaching, and I will be honest with you, the coaching is the exact same. The way I coach, the drill work, all the preparation is the exact same, whether it be in college, pro, to high school. I don't treat it any different. Obviously, the athletes are different. I think the big thing is that looking at the different experiences that you go through, the ups and the downs, and being able to handle that, knowing that they're going to come at you, that the downs are going to come. And I think as a young coach, you probably panic a little more. As you kind of go through it, you realize that you're going to have things occur, whether it be injury or whether it be life, sickness or just tragedy, whatever it may be. And so I think you become a little bit better at handling that and trying to stay, for me, a little more emotionally stable, especially around your kids. And then for me, it's extremely important. I know how important coaches were in my life. I mean, they were the most important, even more so than my parents. And I don't take that for granted at all. I think in the world we live in today that can be so chaotic that to have a light and to have some positive influence is important. Still with, an extreme amount of discipline, and to me, a very old school way of coaching. But I think the kids, they've responded very well to that, and something that I look forward to. And I think it's kind of, as I talk to coaches around, we see it kind of slipping a little bit, but I just refuse. I'm like, I'm going to coach the way I coach, and tough, and going to be honest with kids. I don't think you can always be fair, but I think you can always be honest, because, it's not always the very best player that plays. It's not always the kid who's practiced the most or practiced the hardest. I mean, some of my favorite players were guys that couldn't play dead in a cowboy movie, but you love them, and it's important that they were a part of you, and you remember them all through your career. But yet, it never translated, on the field for them. But the impact was still significant. I remember a player, I'm not going to give his name, but I remember a player I had at Rome, and he was a senior, and he had not stepped on the field. He was a defensive guy, and he asked me one day, he said, Coach asked me anything, I can tell you exactly what I'm supposed to do. And so I'm sure I gave him a call, and he goes, defense, because he just stood on the sideline, But he had been with us for 4 years. And honestly, the only time he stepped on the field was when we came through, the warm-ups or ran across. But loved the boy to death.
Wow.
Yeah, for sure.
That's a very, very cool story.
Well, Coach, you talked a little bit about the adjustment period, because Unity does not play the traditional 11-on-11 that fans are accustomed to, and that has changed again. We're going from 8-man to 9-man this season. So if you could, describe to our viewers what that brand of football looks like.
Okay, yeah. So 8-man football. So arena football was 8-man, but it's not anywhere close to what we do here. There was a lot of different rules and restrictions that we had, like in the arena game or indoor game. This game, if you can draw it up, you can pretty much run it. Now, the only thing that stays the same is eligible receivers being a covered receiver, uncovered. We have to pay attention to that. In the 11-man game, obviously just adding the 2 or 3 players, we played 8-man last year, so you had 3 more players. It don't sound like much, but it really is a lot, especially on the defensive side of the ball, because of the amount of space that you're having to defend. In 8-man and 9-man that we're going to now, basically all you're doing is eliminating your 2 offensive tackles. All right, you still got all the eligible receivers. We're playing on a 53 1/3 field. When we was an 8-man, we were only playing on a 40-yard field. So if you look at a regular football field, if you look at the bottom of the numbers to the bottom of the numbers was 40 yards. Don't sound like much till you walk out there and start looking at it. And so that extra 6.5 yards is significant. All right, so with us, what you find is this. If you're going, it is what drives people crazy. If you're going to stop the run, you have to play man coverage. But if you play man coverage, guess what? Missed tackle, touchdown, band plays, right? And so that's what occurs. And we actually saw that in the state championship game. We had a senior that had really learned to play the game pretty good, and we were putting trips into the boundary, which overloaded the boundary, had him out to the field by himself, and we were throwing 9 routes to him, and he was making the catches. And Sherwood kind of did the same thing, but their guy dropped the ball a couple of times. And so just a couple of catches, and you're out there by yourself. So that is it. So if you're going to stop the pass, then you got to play zone. But if you stop zone, you can't stop the run. Our quarterback over the last 2 years, I'm sure my stats off a little bit, probably a little low, but I think he's rushed for right at 50 touchdowns. and he's thrown for over 40, and he didn't play the first 3 games of last year. 2 years ago, he rushed for 2,500 yards, was averaging over 10 yards a carry. And his rule was you're never allowed to run out of bounds and you're never allowed to juke anybody. I want you to run over everybody because I want them to feel the weight of you hitting them every time. So that's been a shock for some of my coaches. They're like, man, he's our quarterback. Had him run out of bounds. I'm like, nope, he got to run over folks. So that's kind of the difference. Plus, whenever you look at the schemes, there's a lot of similarities, especially in the passing game. Obviously, we're throwing the same stuff that everybody else is throwing. But in the running game, it's a little different just because of that extra guy. So your edge player now, and this is what's hard because when you look on the board and you're drawing plays, it looks like it works, but it don't work because the edge now is what we call a 3 technique, which is the outside shoulder of the guard instead of the tackle. So when I was learning this game, I remember one day we played a team, they beat us unconscious. And I knew that I'd messed up, and I was trying to figure out what the problem was. Well, the problem was they were rushing 4, I was blocking with 3, so if you do the math, you're always down a guy, right? Yeah. I can do that math. But it still wasn't equating to me, so I remember I took one of my slower kids, I put him out the edge, and I had the center snap me the ball, and I just had the kid run, and when I caught the ball, the kid was 1 step from hitting me. So that's how fast it is. So there is no decision. So if somebody comes free, you're in trouble. And so that was my first big lesson I learned in the game. The edge is a 3. So the option game's not always really good because it happens too fast. Everything happens so fast. And so that does translate to the old arena game and the indoor game, where in that game we didn't count sacks. We caught quarterback knockdowns. We just want to knock them to the ground. And because we know if they fall on the ground long enough, they're going to get up and the shoulder's going to be hurting or an elbow's going to be hurting or something like that. So that kind of translates to our game a little bit. So I know I was kind of all over the place there, but it's a really neat game. Third and long mean absolutely nothing. So, you take 3rd and long and it's 3rd and 16, they will spread you out and the quarterback will run. I mean, we had a kid one night actually at Barron Stadium. I think the whole team rushed for like 9 yards and he rushed for 297. Oh, wow. And that was the quarterback because they had spread us out, and it's your Mike linebacker against the best athlete, and you know what happens there. Well, obviously 290-something yards rushing. We beat them, but it was just a tough deal because from a defensive standpoint, you're like, we got them hemmed up. We just can't make the play.
So there's tons of points being scored. Sounds like an exciting brand of football.
Yeah, really.
And for fans that want to see this live and in person, y'all have a new arrangement as far as where you'll be playing this season?
Yeah, we're really excited about that. I'm glad you brought that up. We're playing all of our home games for the high school at Coosa High School. Last year, we played our last 2 playoff games there. Joey Mathis, who's the AD, he was the head coach. He's now the AD. We just got a great relationship with him. I want to hats off to the Floyd Board of Education and them coming in there and helping us out. And it's just funny how, when we were asking about this, our schedule's already made, and we looked at them, and all of a sudden they mesh perfectly. So we'll be going out there. We're really excited about, keeping that partnership just because Russ Dyer, who's our AD, knows those guys and just been great friends for us. So I can't give them enough props for what they've done to help us out for sure.
That is a really, really neat connection and partnership that y'all put together.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely,
awesome.
sure.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, we're up against our first break, but in our second segment, which is going to be coming up here pretty quick, we're going to talk about your coaching staff and dive into some of the players and things of that nature and get to know this football team. But we've got Coach David Humphreys with us here for the Unity Lions, and this is the 2024. I have to look at the screen to remember what year it is. I can't believe it's 2024 Unity Lions football preview show, which there's more coming up after these messages. We'll be right back.
Riverside Auto Group is celebrating 50 years in Rome and Northwest Georgia. Join the celebration and shop for your next car, truck, or SUV from Riverside Auto Group. Browse their selection online at riversideautogroup.com or visit with them in person at Riverside Chevrolet GMC in Rome, Riverside Toyota in Rome, or Riverside GMC Cadillac in Cartersville. Locally owned and operated by the Welburn family since 1974. That's Riverside Auto Group.
All right, we welcome you back into our 2024 Unity Lions football preview show, and we're very glad to have along with us here on the program today Coach David Humphreys. And Coach, in this segment, we want to kick off by talking a little bit about your coaching staff for this year. You referenced that in the first segment, but we didn't dive into any names or anything like that. So tell us who makes up this year's coaching staff.
Well, I think the first guy I need to talk about is Russ Dyer, who's the AD, and he's kind of the guy that just does any job that we need him to do with the team, and just does a great job of, getting us to where we're supposed to go and letting us know what time we're supposed to leave. And he also helps us on the field. Our defensive coordinator, who was with us last year, is Jeremy Green, who's very familiar around here, being the head coach at Armuchee and has coached all over the area. Just done a great job last year. He's a guy that spends a lot of time watching film. Our players really respond very well to him. I have to give him so much credit for the success we had last year. We kind of changed defensive schemes kind of midway through the season. And it was really kind of his baby that he kind of convinced me, because I was kind of stiff-necked a little bit about it initially, but he proved to me, and it was great. So he's such a added asset to the team for sure. Then the other guys have all kind of been with me. You have Jeff Giddens, and Jeff is a guy who's been with me. This will be his fourth year. He coaches the corners and the wide receivers. His sons have played there over the years, and just does a great job. He's a guy that's very, very energetic, a very positive guy, and somebody that I rely very heavily on Fridays. He's the guy that kind of gives me a nervous twitch on Friday nights because he's asking so many dang questions. But it's good. It's all in fun. Barry Alford is another one who has been with me for 4 years. Barry's also mainly our strength coach too. He does a lot, with Unity. They have a huge CrossFit area, and so he's always been a part of that. And then he's kind of taken over. He'll leave work and come and work our guys out, and then he goes back, and then he's just been kind of one of the guys that's just always there with us. And he'll end up coaching our running back position this year, and then he helps me with the inside linebackers as well. Nate King, Nate is another one. He is coached with our middle school, but his son is moving up. His son is Brady, who I'm sure we'll talk about. And he's been on the middle school staff, but now he'll be more with us. And he will be helping us with our receivers, and then also probably helping in the secondary as well. And then the last one, who I'm forgetting right now, and I will pull here in just a second. I know I'm missing one. That's it. That's it. There's 5 of us. So we had 7, and now we're down to 5. So that's it. So there's 5 of us that'll be coaching. We coach the middle school and the high school. So last year, we also won the middle school state championship. Now I was coaching it, but I wasn't the head guy. But this year, we're going to kind of take that back over, and so all those guys will coach. So we coach everybody at the same time, and there's some rules that we have to follow because our middle school kids are not allowed to go against. Per se, helmet on helmet, unless you're an 8th grader, but we allow our varsity guys to hold dummies and stuff like that for them. And I think it's a great thing because it gets those kids over some anxiety that you have just getting on the field. So the great coaching staff, I tell you, I couldn't be more proud of the way in which they handle themselves off the field with the kids, just having conversations. And that's what's most important to me anyhow. So making sure these kids are taken care of and thinking about life on down the road.
Sounds like a fantastic staff. Obviously, y'all are out there to teach them football, but also impact their lives. So let's talk about the kids for a minute. And one exemption from our conversation so far, I don't think we've mentioned yet. You're the defending state champs, coming back, defending that. So who's back? Who are some new names we might hear? And tell us about that state championship.
Okay, so I think we're returning 6 off of defense, and we're returning 5 off of offense. All right, and so we're excited about that because our defense was made up of 5 9th graders last year.
Oh, man.
And and both inside linebackers couldn't make one of me. All right, so one was like 132 and one was 134. I hadn't weighed 260 in a long time. Okay, but When I say that to you, we have those linebackers, William Wilson, who played Mike linebacker for us. I've been trying to go back and think. I don't think I've ever had a player that has made a physical adjustment like he has. Last year, I tell this story. Last year when we did our testing, he ran like a 5'1", and he got mad and he punched the ground. I told him, I said, "You're not fast enough to be mad enough to punch the ground. You have no reason to be mad at how slow you are." But then he just timed in a combine 2 weeks ago at 4.68. I've never had a guy drop that kind. So obviously everything wasn't connected last year. But we started noticing him about midway through the season and how he was coming on. Made 19 tackles in the state championship game at 132 pounds. Now he's bigger than that now, but that's what he was then. Another linebacker that we have, who's a ninth grader, is Cooper Mathis. Cooper is a very physical football player that plays very upset, and I like that a lot about him. He's one that does not say much, but he just gets after it. So those are two ninth graders that played for us and were very significant in what we did last year. And so we expect them this year, now that they're over the anxiety of starting and playing and facing who they face. I think now the game will really slow down for them as they learn the game. The only, our two linemen, we have two linemen we feel like probably the best in the state. Elliott Whiteside, who will be a junior, and Davis Blankenship. I don't think there's anybody any better. I don't know if there's anybody any better around than those two that we have. Both those guys have just played on both sides of the ball. They play every snap for the most part. They're the guys that are kind of the heart and soul of the team because they're boisterous. And both of them, it means a whole lot to play the game. And so they have been starting since 8th grade. So we had some injuries my first year, and they had to play the last couple of games because of injuries we had on the offensive line as 8th graders. And I think my first year we made the second round of playoffs. So they got to play in some playoff games as 8th graders. That's one thing our league can do is 8th graders can't play varsity, all right? So it's a little different. So, these guys will be, they will have basically 5 years in them playing by the time they're seniors, which is significant. Then we have a kid, Dreo Sawyer. Dreo is from the Bahamas, and he's one of our international students. And we just loved him to death last year. He really came into his own. He's that corner that can go out there and lock people down. He'll come and make his tackles. He's going to intercept the ball. He can lock up man coverage on you in a heartbeat.
Good basketball player, too.
Good basketball player as well. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and wish we had his compadre back, Jay Davis, but Jay graduated. And then Isaiah Giddens. Isaiah is another 9th grader that was a corner for us last year that about midway through the season, we started locking him down on the number one receivers, and he made some huge plays in the state championship game, actually had 2 bat downs early. Sherwood had a senior receiver that was pretty dang good, and Isaiah was pretty much on him all night long, and finally got an interception, I think in the second quarter, that really kind of broke the game up for us. But that kid is another one. He's also a kicker, and I think that's pretty much on defense. We got a couple holes we got to fill there. Then on the offensive side of the ball, of course, you can't start talking about offense without talking about Evan Whiteside. He's our quarterback. Evan has started for 3 years for us and has just been, he started for 2 years, just been phenomenal. Very tough kid, doesn't say much. His brother's got the mouth. Evan,
it's funny how that works.
Yeah, Evan don't lead that way. Evan just goes to work, and he's the guy that bounces up off the huddle. Off the pile, and runs back to the huddle, and he's the guy who's carrying the ball. Like I said, 2 years ago he was carrying it probably 35 times plus a game. This past year, because we had some more help, he didn't have to carry quite that much, but he probably averaged 20 carries a game. But Evan's All-State 2 years in a row, and And we just expect big things out of Evan. And he didn't even get to play his first 3 games last year. He was out. And so that's him. Then the 2 offensive linemen I talked about. Now we got to replace a lineman. We're not sure. We've got some guys, but we got to replace one, and somebody's got to step up. But we got some kids, hopefully, that will get that opportunity to do that. As far as running back, Isaiah is that running back again because we're kind of a jet sweep team. Brady King, who I talked about, will only be a 9th grader, but really he's more than a 9th grader. He played some free safety for us last year later on in the playoffs. The kid's got great speed, and he can catch the ball. He's not the tallest cat out there on the field, but he plays very fast and is very confident. He'll never speak. You can't get him to respond to you when you talk to him. He just plays. So he's a whole lot of fun. And Drell Sawyer, he's a receiver. We'll go to him a bunch this year. The last 3 ball games was phenomenal. What he did, he became very physical after the catch. It's one thing to catch the ball, and then after that, get him to start running with some physicality. And he started doing that last year. Actually made some big first downs for us later on, late in the season that we really needed. Instead of Evan having to be the guy getting it, he was getting it for us. So that was a lot of fun. And then we have Tyler Ford. Tyler is a kid that does not know how good he can be. He's also a nervous twitch of mine because right means left means right, up's down, down's up to him. So he and I have to have a lot of conversations. But I love the kid, and it's not because he's a very smart kid. I think that's the problem. He tries to overanalyze things or then he gets down on himself. But no, he is he's one that could be unbelievable, and hopefully this year that will start to occur because adding the 9th man, that moves him from the backfield out to an inside slot, which is going to free him up a little bit. He's got nice hands, but he can really run the football, especially when he gets in space. And so we're really looking forward to seeing him. And I think he's probably grown about 3 or 4 inches. He hadn't put on the weight, but he's put on the height. So that's been nice. His dad's a big man.
One of the things that wanted to ask you about, we talked a little bit about the format of 9-man football, the differences and those sorts of things. But how does that work as far as special teams? Because I know we'll probably move into some of your special teams personnel as well.
Yeah.
But.
That's a total nightmare, but outside of that, no. I think the thing that happens to you on special teams is that obviously, especially kickoffs and stuff, the one thing that you'll see is we're not always conventional. A lot of it's not onside kick, but it's a lot of squib kicking. Just because I've always had this philosophy: if my kicker can't put it in the end zone, then I don't want to just kick it to the 5 and have to go cover every time. I'm going to kick the ball around because that's a 60-yard sprint. And the thing, and it happens at every level, but with ours, especially with reduced numbers, if we have a broken chin strap, or say, for instance, one of our guys just ran 60 yards on a touchdown run, there's not enough time for him to recover to have to go cover the kick. So we try to do things from a special team standpoint that kind of helps us a little bit. Even though we may give up 15 or 20 yards of position, that's better than giving up the big play. 2 years ago, we went 5.5 games without ever punting. And so this past year I can't quite say that. But punting the ball, you'll punt it a couple times a game, but we're directional. We really have to pay attention. Now, we practice it every single day. I'm a big special teams believer. That's what our calling card when I was at Rome was our special teams. And so we work it hard every day. The problem is when you look up there and you had those 1 or 2 guys, especially early in the season when the heat's hitting them and they're starting to get twinges in their calves or their hamstrings. The last thing you want to do is send a guy 70 yards down, on a sprint. Right. So we have to, sometimes people, I can't believe they're not kicking it deep, and I understand that. But we're also probably trying to conserve footfalls, and that's one thing we talk about is how many footfalls do our kids have in a game. Very, very important because, we were talking kind of off air on a 11-man game, even though our time's the same, you'll usually play about 145 plays, 50 plays. We're playing upwards of 180 plays a game just because of not getting people off the field or running out of bounds. Now, that may change a little bit this year because the field being wider and guys not quite running out of bounds as often and stopping the clock, but we're yet to be seen.
Gotcha.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about the schedule and how that changes moving to 9-man. I know not every team was able to make that change. You mentioned that when we were talking before.
Sure.
So what's the schedule look like?
Okay, so the last I've heard, is that the reason why that 8-man has gone to 9-man is so 9-man teams, if they want to get involved in passing leagues with people, they would have the same amount. They would have the 7-on-7. They could go play 7-on-7. I've never been too concerned about that. But throughout the state, what we did is we gave everybody I think they gave everybody a month, 45 days to decide if they wanted to go to 9-man. I think 4 or 5 teams, actually Sherwood Baptist, who we played the last 2 years, because we lost the state championship 2 years ago, 12 seconds ago in the game. And, that was okay. We won't think about that. It was 2 years ago, right?
Yeah.
But anyhow, so they couldn't, and it was just because it's not that they didn't want to. They were down in Albany, and their closest game was going to be 2.5 hours. And then if they were going to play all those teams and you look at all the other sports, then all of a sudden you start looking on a weekday when basketball gets rolling or baseball, they would be on the road all the time. So
the equivalent of UCLA and USC going to the Big Ten.
That's right.
Makes so much sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but riding the bus instead of flying, right? Yeah. So what we've done, from what I've understood, is that we've had probably 6 to 10 teams from GHSA that have reached out to us about wanting to play 9-man just because of numbers. And you see these teams, and I'm familiar with them. They have 1 or 2 big classes. They say, we can go play 11-man football, and after those 2 classes are gone, they drop right back down. Fans get very perturbed with that, and I understand that. I always say, stay in your lane. Just stay in your lane. Wherever you're at, be where you're at, right? But these numbers are fluctuating, and so they've reached out to us wanting to join us. From what I understand, our league said, no, we're going to give it, it's going to be 2 years before we're going to let you in. Not because we don't want you, it's just we want to get the infrastructure right, make sure everything's going right before we do that. So I think there's going to be 28 teams in our league. We're the only state in the Southeast that's playing 9. There's only 3 states in the country playing 9-man. That was one of the reasons why I was a little upset going to 9-man, because we were scrimmaging a team up in Chattanooga, Grace Baptist, because there's a pretty big 8-man league up there, and in Alabama. So in our mind, we wanted to start traveling and start playing some teams out of state just to do something different. Now we can't do that anymore because Michigan and I think South Dakota is the only 2 other states that play 9-man. So that's a little bit of a haul. But so anyhow, so that's kind of it. So many of our teams are really around Atlanta. I think for 3 years I played 3 games or 2 games a year in Cumming. I thought we play one more game over there, we're going to start filing taxes in Cumming because how many schools are over in that area. So that's kind of it. And our schedule, we pretty much fall right in line with GHSA on start times and all that stuff. And the only thing different is where they have 5 rounds of the playoff. We only have 3 rounds, and if you win your region, you get your first round bye. So in order to, like last year, we only played 2 games in the playoffs instead of 3 because we got a first round bye.
Okay.
This is a dumb question. I know this, but I have to ask you this. Have you ever been involved in theater or stand-up comedy or anything like that? Because you got away with words, man.
Well, maybe if you talk to my wife or whatever, but no, yes.
I got you. Well, we got to take a break. We've got Coach David Humphreys with us and enjoying our conversation. We come back. We got a whole other segment coming up, so we'll come back to wrap things up after these messages. We'll be back.
Riverside Auto Group is celebrating 50 years in Rome and Northwest Georgia. Join the celebration and shop for your next car, truck, or SUV from Riverside Auto Group. Browse their selection online at riversideautogroup.com or visit with them in person at Riverside Chevrolet GMC in Rome, Riverside Toyota in Rome, or Riverside GMC Cadillac in Cartersville. Locally owned and operated by the Welburn family since 1974. That's Riverside Auto Group.
welcome back to WLAQ Sports 2024 Unity Christian School Lions preview show. We're here with Coach David Humphreys. And Coach, he was asking you about your comedy before you left, so I had to go back in the memory bank. I still share this story with my kids. When you were coaching me in soccer, I was taking corners one afternoon and shanked one, and I'd let out a HE double hockey sticks. And you said, "Griffin, what'd you say?" And I repeated it to you. Said, "Give me 20 push-ups for being honest." Stuck with me all these years. Anyway, just wanted to share that.
Oh, they're good. That's good.
Yeah. And I'll let Matt take the first question after that.
In this segment, we kind of like to kick it off by talking about your goals and expectations.
Sure.
But kind of framing that and talking of mantras and themes. I know that a lot of times, coaches are not going to say, well, we want to win this amount of games or, get playoffs, things like that.
Right.
I'm not really asking you that, but I just mean themes, mantras, the approach to the season.
Yeah. Okay. So that's a great question because I think there was a time when I tried to always come up with something for the year, right? And so I've kind of had this saying that I've used over the last few years that expectation precedes perfection. Okay. And I use that with the guys because if you don't expect to be there, you're not going to get there. I mean, it's just not going to happen. And I think with young people, they don't understand that at all. I get it. I totally get that. But I think over time, and you put in enough work, then they start getting little blips of it, and then they start grabbing a hold of it a little bit. So we're going to expect for perfection. If you talk to my guys, there's no excuses. I mean, there is no such thing as an excuse. I don't care what happens in life. There's no excuse because we still have to deal with it, right? And so, I mean, they'll come up to me and say, "Coach, my ankle's hurt. I know you don't want to hear about it, but I'm like, okay, yeah, I don't want to hear about it. Just get it fixed, But, and I say that kind of tongue in cheek because you do. But what, we also have a saying is that never let your opponent see you sweat. And so we spend a lot of time talking about staring down our opponent, looking, no matter how bad I'm hurting inside, no matter what just happened to me, I'm never going to allow my opponent to ever see what I really feel. I'm not going to do that because I just remember many years ago being a player and stuff like that and trying to decide whether or not you fit in or not, and sometimes you have to kind of fool yourself in those tough times. And so that's what we kind of try to teach our guys is we're going to stand up, look people in the eyes. We're not going to look back. We're not going to look down. We're not going to look away. We're going to look people right dead in. No matter how uncomfortable it is, that's what we're going to do. And we're going to let them know that we're going to be there in 24 seconds, no matter how bad. And so that's, I think, is probably, the most important thing to me when it comes to teaching a young man about competition. I tell them all the time, I said, look, guys, if we're thumb wrestling, I'm going to find a way to beat you. I'm going to kick you in the ankle, make you think about the pain in the ankle. I don't care, okay? But what we're not going to do is just assume that I'm going to allow it to occur. And so that's one of the things that we do with our guys. And we talk about, the expectation of what we have now. What is that expectation? The expectation, I don't care about our opponent. If you came out to my practice, most of my guys won't even really know who we're playing against because I don't care. I've never worried about focusing on my opponent because there's nothing I can do to affect them, right? The only people I can affect is my own team. So we talk about beating each other and being better than our teammates because we know that if we're better than them, then that's what we're facing. We believe we're facing better at practice than we are on a Friday night. Whether that's true or not, I don't know, but that's what we believe. And if we can get ourselves focusing on ourselves, and we won't listen to all the other noise that's out there. Guys, we started out 0-3 last year, and we were a bad 0-3 team, and then all of a sudden we went on a roll because we just kept going to practice every day. We weren't talking about 0-3. We weren't talking about 0-2, 0-3, or hey, what happens if we're 1-3? We didn't talk about that. We just talked about we're going to go out and deal with the next team the very best that we can. I think whenever we come off the field, I know it sounds crazy, but to me, I've even gotten away from a lot of the grading and things of that nature because I look at everything and I look at film, but there's the old plus minus. He did good on that play. Well, there's a lot of other things that happen that make that occur. And so we just try to be honest with our guys. And the one thing I'm not going to do with one of my players is tell them they're better than what they're not. I mean, I'm going to let them know exactly and in the right way. Because I tell them, I said, look, I don't know how many men are going to talk to you like a man, but I'm not talking to you like a ninth grader. I want to talk to you like a man. I'm going to respect you enough to do that, but you also got to be able to handle it, And I think that may be kind of tough at times initially, but I think that they grow to respect that. And we all know that when respect is involved, then trust becomes a major part. And I think that's what they're going to get from us, and that's what I expect out of my coaches, yeah.
Well, Coach, final question for you this afternoon. This has been a great conversation. Really have enjoyed it. But one common thing we've seen with coaches, it's tough to leave coaching behind. It's a calling, obviously.
Sure.
And you had mentioned that you'd stepped away for a little while.
Yeah.
And it felt right to come back to Unity. We've had interactions with other coaches at Unity that they talk about the community out there. So talk to me about why Unity and what makes it such a special place.
Well, we touched on it off air just a hair. I do work for the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. That's my full-time job. So I don't teach at Unity or all I do is go out and coach and create chaos. That's about it. And so whenever this came about, so I told you I kind of went into ministry work. I pastor a church in Lyerly, Georgia, actually, as well. And when all this came about, I knew it was time for me to step away. Years ago, I think it was 2017, 2018, when I stepped away for the first time, and it was right. So I knew that coaches were really struggling. So with FCA, I don't deal so much with the players as I do with coaches. So I'm the coaches minister because I know what coaches are going through. Right now, I think 2 years ago, the coaching industry, it became the highest percent of divorce rate, went over 65% of coaches get divorced. I think it has a lot to do with social media and how fast it comes at us, and as a young coach, and I struggle with this as a young coach, you connect your identity to wins and losses. And, y'all been around sports enough around the area. There's great coaches that their records don't always reflect just because the cats ain't there, right? But it don't mean they've forgotten how to coach. But yet, from a societal standpoint, it's a real heavy burden because winning and losing. I remember hearing Tony Dungy talk one time, and he said, the thing that's always blown my mind is he goes, I want a Super Bowl. So one man in the world is allowed to be the head coach of a Super Bowl champion. Only one. So that means everybody else is no good? That's ridiculous to think about that. Mm-hmm. And so the moment that I could detach myself from the winning and losing as the way that you identified is was a very freeing moment. Like I said, Ian, if we're thumb wrestling, all right, we're on, okay? But that's not going to determine who I am.
Is that how we're going to end the show?
With the thumb wrestling. But
interesting.
I just think that it's, I think for me, as a coach now, that whenever I got that call and I knew that, Unity is Christian-based education, Christian worldview. And y'all know, man, the world's a crazy place. Mm-hmm. And I tell my guys all the time, anybody I speak to around this area, when I talk to football teams, I'm like, man, be a light. There's enough chaos out there, man. Be a good guy. Don't mean that you got to be, the old meek and mild and all that stuff, man. I expect you to be stupid and I expect you to do dumb things, but we can still be good people. And so that is my challenge. And so when I got this opportunity, I thought, okay, I can maybe go share a little bit of that and be a part of that again. I felt like it was the right time for me. Man, it was incredible. I remember after the first game we played, well, you'll remember Coach Phil Wood. He actually came with me. He's a principal up in Chattooga now. He actually came on my staff, and I remember calling him that night and said, "Man, this is cool. This is a lot of fun. I appreciate the hard work to get that feeling again. That you're doing something." Yeah, the game of football is unbelievable. It's been the most impactful thing in my life outside of Jesus Christ in my world, but football has just taught me so much, and I've been on great teams and I've been on really, really bad teams, and I probably learned a whole lot more out of the bad teams. I probably worked harder on the bad teams than I ever did on my good teams, but they've all taught me something, and so to me that's the way I see it. And so however many years I got left, that's kind of it,
Well, Coach, I think that I speak for everybody watching this when I say that no doubt that the Unity community And not to mention just the Roman Floyd community. Very lucky to have you here and the influence that you have on the kids and the coaches and everybody involved, man. That's awesome.
Well, Matt, I appreciate
really
it.
Great.
Yeah, thanks for coming out and talking with us.
Yeah, it's been a while, man. It's great to see you, brother.
I know, you too.
Yeah.
You too.
Well, that's this is the part of the show where we shamelessly ask people to subscribe to our channel.
And we haven't done that.
We haven't done that at all
that's
yet
right,
today.
That's right.
So, but we want to keep doing these things and bring more, content to the community related to sports and news and other things, all things local. So make sure you subscribe and also like our content, share it, and all that kind of stuff. Help us get it circulating. That helps us to do more of this kind of stuff.
It does, and we'd like to bring a lot more of it to you.
Indeed. Well, that's going to put a wrap on our 2024 high school football preview show with head coach of the Unity Lions, David Humphreys. And again, Coach, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
We appreciate you, and best of luck to your team this year, and go Lions.
Go Lions.
Hey, go Lions.
Hope you enjoyed this edition of the 2024 Rome Floyd County High School football preview shows presented by WLAQ Sports. Make sure you hit like and subscribe to our channel for more local content from the WLAQ Radio YouTube channel.